Vern Phillips. So Vern's story, Vern has an incredible story that's set against the backdrop of probably the greatest sporting event of the 20th century. However, the outcome of that matchup pales in comparison to the outcome of a much more personal encounter. Here's Vern to tell you about the rumble in the jungle meets the rumble in my heart.
Well, it was a hot, steamy, tropical night in equatorial Africa. Zaire, 1974. George Plimpton, a tall, handsome sports writer and journalist, recently had written Paper Lion and was quite famous, was hitting on a girl that I had just met, a sweet Texan whom I had been in training with for 6 months, or 6 weeks, and I was perturbed that he was very persuasive in trying to convince the girl that was going to hitchhike across West Africa by herself that he should accompany her, because it's always safer to have a man with a traveling companion. Was she really going to go with him? Well, hi, I'm Vern Phillips, and I was a child of the 60s. Make love, not war. And when it was time for the Army to knock on my door to try to convince me to join them, I decided that Peace Corps was probably a more elegant solution. And lo and behold, Morocco needed diesel mechanics. Well, I had been a grease monkey for most of my early days, and since I was 13, I had put a motorcycle together out of a burlap bag of parts. So it was really great to go to a country that was right out of Lawrence of Arabia. The first pump that we repaired on the edge of the Sahara Desert for water, to bring water to Bedouins, was an amazing experience where, with duct tape and baling wire, we were able to repair this pump and get the water running. And the joy and ecstasy on the Bedouins' faces, and the celebration that night that we had in this dark camel-hair tent with couscous and roasted lamb, couscous and tagine with the flavors of cumin, salt, and dates and almonds. It was great. But the fact was that 90% of the women in Morocco were gay. And after 2 years of my time in Morocco, I was really tired of the monastic life and having any kind of a relationship with an unveiled woman. So I finished my 2 years and my commitment for Peace Corps in Morocco, but I wasn't ready to come home. The war in Vietnam was still going on, and the Army was knocking at my door. So I asked the director if there was any place else in the world that needed a mechanic. And lo and behold, there was a telex that came in, and they needed a mechanic to keep a fleet of vehicles going for a goiter and cretinism eradication campaign in the northern jungles of Zaire. Okay. I didn't know anything about goiters or cretinism, and I didn't know what they needed a mechanic to do, but I was game. And when I got to Kinshasa, I was greeted by gorgeous, smiling Zaire women, unveiled, in bright, tight colored material. And I was ecstatic. And even better, the campaign was not ready to kick off. and they asked me, well, you know French pretty well from being in Morocco. Would you like to learn the local dialect, Lingala? And I said, great, yes, I'd love to learn that. So before I knew it, I was at the training center in Bukavu, and there Peace Corps really knows how to train people in language. It's called submersion. And literally, you cannot speak English anytime during the day, during your waking hours. You have to only speak the language that you're being taught in. Well, I knew French pretty well. And it just so happened that the trainers there also spoke French. And I had a pretty good monopoly on speaking the language of love to the trainers that also were speaking French. In particular, this one cute young woman from Texas. Well, needless to say, we hit it off pretty well. We climbed the volcanoes in Zaire and slept on the caldera looking down into the bubbling molten lava. We went and saw the mountain gorillas. We had a great time. But as all good things must end, and the way it happens with young people and these infatuations that they fall into, we knew that probably this wasn't going to continue forever, but it was good for the moment. And when we had to leave and go back to Kinshasa to go to our different sites and for the trainers to actually leave the country, we were greeted by an unexpected great event. The Rumble in the Jungle. The famous Muhammad Ali-George Foreman fight, the championship fight, that Mobutu had paid $1 million to each of the participants to come and fight in Kinshasa. So that night, the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador, invited the Peace Corps volunteers to come to his residence and meet the fight entourage as well as the music festival participants, including Miriam Makeba, the Pointer Sisters, James Brown, Howard Cosell, who could forget him, and George Plimpton. Well, it was a great night, and it was a rumbling sound that was beating me, either the beat from James Brown or the staccato diatribe that Muhammad Ali would be talking, or the rumbling in my heart, because I knew this was the last night that I was going to be with my friend Pat from Texas. So that night when we left, I didn't know if Pat left with George or what happened. I just didn't want to know. But this broken up box, cardboard box in brown paper, found its way to my mud hut in the jungles of the Congo. And as I opened it up, I found a mound of crumbs and mealworms. And I delicately looked into the mound and pulled out this little note. And the note said, "There's more of this sweetness back in Texas." What are you waiting for?